Hello and welcome to another episode of For Zion's Sake, the CUFI UK podcast. My name is Alex and I'm joined here by Alastair.
Hello.
And this week we're looking at the anti-Semitic arson attack that took place against London's Jewish community earlier this week, where 4 ambulances were destroyed at a local synagogue. We're also looking at an art exhibition which features grotesque anti-Semitic imagery. That's in Kent, where unfortunately it was promoted by the local council.
That's right, and we explain how some age-old anti-Semitic tropes are identifiable in the present time and the present culture. Plus, as we discuss the threat from Iran to the United Kingdom, we ask the question, does the Iranian regime have a missile that can reach London? So Alex, where do we begin? Because there is so much to talk about today, so much has happened. Let's begin with the anti-Semitic arson attack that took place in the early hours of Monday morning in Golders Green, London.
Yep.
The 4 ambulances belonging to a Jewish charity that were destroyed. They exploded after being set on fire.
Yep.
And this has come as, a devastating attack, really, which is very clearly an attack on Jews in our capital city. The scenes we saw were like that of a conflict zone, but they were not a war zone.
Yeah.
But they took place in London.
Exactly. Yeah, just as, like you said, like a conflict zone, just as rockets are being fired from Iran, landing in Israel, causing devastation, cars on fire, etc., the same scenes we're seeing in London as, the same hatred against the Jewish people is on display here in our capital city, which is an absolute disgrace, really.
These ambulances belonged to a Jewish charity, Hatzola.
Yep.
They were funded by the local community. They serve both the Jewish community and non-Jews.
Yep.
This, of course, has really shaken the Jewish community. I've spoken to a number of Jewish people that are, from Golders Green.
Yeah.
And some have said, well, this hasn't come as a surprise. I mean, that's a
terrible thing to say.
Terrible thing, isn't it? To the reality, though, that it's not come as a surprise. But these were explosions. In fact, our good friend Jeremy Woodliff, who is of the GPS network, I was speaking to him yesterday. When he heard it whilst he was asleep, he immediately thought it was a car bomb. Jews in this country should not be facing this threat.
No.
We've been warning about, an attack like this happening because of the environment, the toxic environment that we have as a country have allowed to fester.
Yep.
We have leaders, government leaders, have been saying all the right things on the surface of, standing up against anti-Semitism, calling it out. And yes, we need to do that. It is so important. But we have also allowed this toxic narrative towards Israel, this scapegoating and demonization of the Jewish people. And here we are now in a climate which, as Christians, we need to speak out and we need to show our support for the Jewish community at this time. We do not want to see another incident like this.
Definitely not.
But things do have to change, Alex.
Yes, and I think this is actually one of those events that might cause a change. I know we've had some obviously very horrific incidents such as the Manchester car ramming and stabbing attack that happened there, where 2 people died. But this, I think, it's almost, probably hit home a bit harder because it was in London, in one of the largest Jewish community in the UK. And I think there's almost like a symbolic thing that happened because this was an attempt by a group of individuals. We don't know if it was terror related or if it was just a criminal, a hate thing.
In my mind, Alex, it was a terror attack.
Yeah, well,
because
exactly.
Irrespective of who, if this, I said to you the other day, if this had been in a conflict zone, it would be described as a war crime.
Exactly. Yes.
Because you do not destroy ambulances.
I know.
And yes, we've heard reports that it could be linked to Iran directly. It might be the IRGC. It could be another a smaller and newer Iranian-backed terrorist organization.
Yep.
Or it could be neither of those, and it is a group of anti-Semitic Islamists, for example. We don't know yet. We'll probably know very soon, though, maybe even before this podcast is aired. But nevertheless,
exactly. But I agree with you completely. But what I was trying to say was, like, whatever it was that actually attempted it, their attempt was to cause damage. Basically, their attempt is to snuff out the Jewish people. What they don't realize is actually what they did was they lit a beacon that shone for all of us to see this hatred and for it to become mainstream.
Yes.
So they actually, I mean, this wasn't an attack on, an Israeli company that makes weapons that are used by Israel. This was a Jewish community, ambulances that serve all people in that area, all Brits and all British people. Like, I mean, there's a very big sort of admiration and sort of appreciation for the NHS in the UK. We really do have a viewpoint that the healthcare system should be protected. And I know these ambulances are not NHS, but it's that same sort of feeling. It's the same whether it was St. John's ambulances or apparently there's 200 different organisations that provide ambulances in the UK, with Hatzola being one of them, which has these 4 ambulances funded by the Jewish community. So this is not a rare thing. This is not, ambulances for Jews, this sort of thing. But I think it taps into that sentiment that this was an attack on the Jewish community, yes, but it actually affected British people because these were ambulances that were for everyone. Ambulances should be neutral. Everyone knows in the UK when an ambulance is coming and you're driving, you move your car out of the way to let the ambulance through to save lives. These were life-saving, equipment and ambulances, and instead they were vandalized. Like you said, the explosion that happened, it wasn't, even though it was an arson attack, the result of that was an explosion that woke people up. Our friend Jeremy, he was about a mile away from this incident, which means potentially tens of thousands of people heard this explosion in that area because it's a highly populous area. And it's just one of those things where I really do hope and pray that this wakes people up because, I mean, I know an attack on Jews anywhere should wake people up, but I think this has actually brought it home a bit more that this is showing the evil behind it because these ambulances were there to save lives and they were the things that were destroyed. And
those are the values that we have in Britain. The Jewish community, represent or shares the values because they are British.
Yes.
The British Jews. And of course, we have in common these values that are really under attack at the moment. And that's why it is imperative that as Christians, we recognize the values that we have in common. That we stand shoulder to shoulder. And that means calling out all forms of anti-Semitism. And there are some things I think we have failed to do in this country that would have helped. We should have banned the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is unbelievable that organization, that terror arm of the Iranian regime, is still legal in the UK. That means you are able to support the IRGC. It means you're able to fund the IRGC. It means you are able to have some affiliation. That means you can stand in the center of wherever, of Golders Green, and hold up I love IRGC. It's sending completely the wrong messages. It's sending signals that it is okay to incite Jews in this country and incite terror, I should say, not incite Jews, but incite terror against Jews in this country. And then, of course, there are the issues of funding and the streams of funding and how money gets moved around from different criminal gangs overseas and channeled through UK sources, as well as universities in the United Kingdom and various affiliations which certain lecturers might have with universities in Tehran, and the kind of research and information which is shared and passed on, and all these sort of things. It's a web. We could have just banned them. And this Labour government, when they were in opposition, were in favour of banning the IRGC. In fact, Parliament had a majority for banning the IRGC, and they're still not banned. But that's just one thing. The other thing is actually the way in which grassroots anti-Semitism is spreading. The fact that we see on the streets of the UK support for the Ayatollahs, the calling for globalising the Intifada. Do you want to know what globalising the Intifada looks like? Look at the pictures from the news from Golders Green on the early hours of Monday morning, seeing ambulances exploding in the Jewish community, filling a community with fear about what the next attack might look like. That's what globalized Intifada looks like. They've been chanting for it. It is happening. And whilst we must not let it intimidate us, it is okay for you and I to sit here and show disgust. But we do sympathize with the Jewish community that are living and are going to schools and going to synagogues and are just trying to live their lives as law-abiding, morality-loving citizens of this country.
Yeah.
And yet we are silent when we are seeing support for Islamist regimes, support for enemies of this state, and yet getting away with it. So I think there's a lot more that we can do.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something, as you said, the Jewish community have expected this to happen because they've been seeing the warning signs. They've been talking about it. We've been talking about it. Anyone with any sense can see that this was the path that the UK is heading on. And yet, all we seem to get from the government is just more words, more platitudes, more empty words, I would say, because it doesn't matter what they say. Nothing is changing. In fact, it's getting worse all the time. And actually, their actions speak louder than their words. Yeah. This UK, the Labour government has done a number of things in the last 18 months that they've been going, which have damaged the UK-Israel relationship, have hurt the Jewish community, have undermined Israel's right to exist. For example, when they recognised a Palestinian state, split the land in two, divided Jerusalem in half, took away the rights to the Jewish people to any of their holy sites in Jerusalem when they made that decision. And all of these things feed into building anti-Semitism. And we've seen it here through we see it on our social media every day. We see it through the news every day. Anti-Semitism is now a mainstream thing in the UK that everyone's talking about. And it's funny because me and you were talking a couple of days back where I said, when we first started at CUFI UK, we were almost like this fringe. Well, we are still a fringe group, I would imagine, in mainstream talk. But the topics we were talking about seemed very fringe. And yet now everyone is talking about the topics we've been talking about for over a decade. Yes. So we've been talking about anti-Semitism, about the threat from Iran. Yes. We've been talking about the church falling away from the Bible. We've been talking about the Judeo-Christian roots of Britain being eroded. We've been talking about all these things for years. And now it seems everyone is waking up and realizing. And obviously our supporters are tuned in as well. And I think the reason why they're tuned in and the reason why we're tuned in as well is nothing special about us. It's simply because we read our Bibles. Yes. We are led by the Spirit. We understand the times that we live in. And, Israel is... And the Jewish people are part of the sort of epicenter of world history, and they have been since God chose them and since God chose that land. And right now, it's even more so coming to that sort of coming to a head really, where everyone's focus is now going back to Israel and Jerusalem, back to the Jewish people. The Jewish people's focus is going back to Israel. Yeah,
absolutely. Whether we like it or not, these issues are front and center. You cannot get away the fact of the significance of Israel, of Jerusalem, and it's. I think a lot of people are waking up.
Yeah.
I think people understand that there is a battle on against forces of evil and of darkness, but at the same time, there is also so much deception.
Yes,
and there's so much propaganda, and so that means that we do have our work cut out, and we have to confront those lies, because we'll be coming on to some of the ways in which people are being misguided, even in something which seems so obvious to condemn, like the explosion of ambulances. Right? Not everyone, some people online, and I know the depths of the comment section on social media do not necessarily represent the British public on a larger scale, but it is horrendous. Some of the anti-Semitism which has been actually directed at CUFI UK, the anti-Semitic comments and rhetoric, simply because we are we're stating about what's happening. I mean, we can come to some examples before we give some examples, if that's okay. Shall we just mention to everyone listening and watching that CUFI UK is raising funds for Hatzola, for this Jewish ambulance charity. They, of course, have lost 4 ambulances as a result of the attack, and we are raising funds through CUFI UK in order for us to make a collective donation towards in support of Hatzola, so that they can rebuild. And of course, the UK government has already said that they will fund the replacement of the 4 ambulances, and they did that after we announced our campaign. But the significance of our fundraising campaign is that we want to show very evidently that Christians are standing with this Hatzola ambulance charity and the good work that they are doing, incredible work that they are doing, and also the wider Jewish community. And so we believe there will be a rebuilding, there will be a lot of needs for equipment, and really we just want to bless that organization and to see it be able to pick itself up from this devastating attack. So we have a fundraising campaign. We will put the link in the description of this podcast, and you can also go to www.cufi.org.uk, and the campaign is there on the homepage. We have been, really overwhelmed and blessed to have seen the response already in just 2 or 3 days since we launched this appeal. CUFI supporters have already been extremely generous in giving towards this campaign. And if you would like to make a contribution, then please do make a donation. I would just emphasize to give specifically to this raising of funds for Hatzola, you do need to follow the link that is provided to ensure that those funds are passed on. And thank you to everyone that's already supported.
And just to add to that, if you donate through other links and things, it'll obviously go to CUFI's main fund. But actually, we do a lot of work which actually blesses the Jewish people in many different ways. And through CUFI, we have operations in Israel where we're blessing the Jewish community there. One of the main things we're doing at the moment through CUFI is with food meal distribution, which we, at the time of the Gaza war, we were doing that for example, the IDF and frontline people dealing with the war, especially with medical teams and so forth. And right now it's helping Jewish families to be fed with hot meals during that time. So there's other things as well if you want to donate to the CUFI fund. And also it helps us with every other thing we're doing here at CUFI. We're providing literature, providing education, doing events, educating the church, doing parliament events and so forth. So there's a whole load of things to donate to. So if you want to donate to the ambulance, you have to make sure you go to the specific link. And if you want to donate generally to CUFI, then you can use any donation link on our website.
But also it'd be worth mentioning what that link is. That is www.cufi.org.uk/donate. That is to give directly to CUFI UK and the work which we do, and we do have a need.
Yeah.
We do rely upon the support of those who are generous to give towards our work, and of course the CUFI partners who are giving on a monthly basis. And if you would like to become a partner of CUFI, then there is an option to do that by following that donate link. So thank you very much. But moving back to this story of the attacks on Hatzola, we've noticed that there has been actually anti-Semitism within the anti-Semitism attack.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would be quite a clear-cut attack to condemn has actually brought more anti-Semites out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And we've always said, Alex, that anti-Semitism breeds anti-Semitism.
Yep.
The statistics prove that. We saw last year, and the figures which were released just a few weeks ago, that in 2025, when the Heaton Park synagogue terror attack took place, that same day was the highest peak of anti-Semitic attacks recorded in the United Kingdom on that day and the following day, which shows that actually, and that's not coincidence, it showed that anti-Semitic attack triggered more anti-Semitism on that day. In some cases, in celebration of that attack, or in solidarity of that attack, or by inspiration. We also saw a similar peak in the figures on the day of the Bondi attack against the Jewish community there in Sydney. So you see there is this consistent pattern, and we've seen that for a while.
Yeah.
So we should be aware that this anti-Semitic attack, which took place in London this week, will have, perhaps when the figures are released, will perhaps show again more anti-Semitic incidents. And we can see that simply from the rhetorical evidence that we have
on our social media.
Yeah. So let's give some examples.
Yep.
One example, and by the way, there is this layered, historic, ancient anti-Semitism, the traditional forms of anti-Semitism, like that what we saw in the medieval times, and for centuries, that actually are identifiable right now.
Yeah.
One of those is conspiracy.
Yep.
We've had comments saying, "Oh, Israel did it.
Yeah, it was Mossad
did it.
The Jews blew their own ambulances up." Yeah,
that's just age-old anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Smearing the Jewish people, blaming the Jewish people for attacks on themselves.
I know.
Blaming the victims for their, for being attacked. Look, that would be unacceptable in any other context.
Yep.
If you imagine any other people group that are victims of an attack, then being pointed to and say, well, actually, you might be victims, but you're the ones who did it.
I know.
That would be unthinkable.
I know. The Jews don't need to fake their own attacks because there's enough people in the world who hate them.
Yes.
It's like, it just makes absolutely no sense. There are, an interesting stat, there are more Muslims that live in Israel than there are Jews that live in Europe. Right? Think about this.
I'm thinking. Yeah.
Maybe this is going off like slightly a different tangent.
No.
What I'm saying is there's about 15 million Jews in the entire world.
Yep.
There are less than 2 million Jews who live in Europe.
Yes.
There are more than 2 million Muslims who live in Israel.
Yeah.
Right? Israel is accused of being, oppressors of Muslims, oppressors of Arabs, etc. And yet they are such a small number that what I'm saying is Jews are massively outnumbered everywhere in the world.
It reminded me of something I read this week. I don't watch the Joe Rogan podcast.
Right.
And I'm sure we have more viewers than his. However, I read a story this week that one of their guests pointed out to him that there are probably around 15 million, that sort of figure, Jews in the whole world. And he wouldn't accept it. He wouldn't, couldn't believe it.
How many did you think there were?
I'm on 1 billion.
Wow.
Right.
So yeah.
And when you think about it, that there are fewer Jews in the whole world than there are subscribers of his channel.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's more people listening to that podcast than there are Jews. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and this is what I'm saying. It's like Jews are outnumbered everywhere. Like there are far, far more people who hate them than there are Jews that live, right?
Yeah.
And even within the Jewish community, unfortunately, there are Jews who are anti-Semitic and who are working against the interests of the preservation of the Jewish people. And the thing is, one thing, like you said, on social media, whenever we say anything about Israel or about anti-Semitism, we are just like, it's like hitting a beehive or something, and suddenly all the bees come out. We put a post up this week which simply said this. It said, "Anti-Semitism is sin, and as sin, it damns the soul." And this was a quote from Pastor John Hagee. And we said, Christians owe it, and that was the image. And the comment next to it was, Christians owe it to the Jewish people to be their defenders against hatred. Obviously, we are Christians. The Jewish people are the people who Jesus came to earth through, who God made covenants with. The whole of the Bible is practically written by Jews, right? 90-something% of the Bible is written by Jews. It is through the Jewish people that the whole world is blessed. The Christians, we owe it to the Jewish people. Yep. And yet, that comment there, anti-Semitism is sin, and as sin it damns soul, we had over 3,300 comments on that post, almost all of them. And I'm not even joking when I say almost all of them are anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And we've had people telling us, your comments, your own posts prove that there is a massive crisis with anti-Semitism. Because we've not said there, stand with Israel. We've not said, we need to be defenders of Israel. We've said we need to defend the Jewish people. Yeah. And yet they come out with saying things like, there's actually so many comments here. I'm not sure if I should go into reading them. Do you want to get to your points before we go into?
I mentioned one. I've probably found another 5 points regarding the Hatzola attack.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, we can talk about.
So conspiracy is one.
And by the way, we've had lots of conspiracy theories on here.
Yes.
Through that, and a lot of people saying things, for example, like, we are Jews, we're being paid by Israel, we're Mossad, all these different conspiracies against us even.
Dual loyalty as well.
Yeah.
Towards, the Jewish people. But one of the other things is what I've discussed, elitism and also special treatment narratives.
Yes.
That is an age-old anti-Semitic trope.
Yeah.
And we are seeing it also in this anti-Semitic attack. Why Jewish ambulances is one of the things.
Yeah.
Why do Jews get preferential treatment, etc., etc.? Let's just be absolutely clear.
Yeah.
One of the first things that I did on Monday morning, I Googled Hatzola. And I read, and I noticed, one of the first things I noticed actually was they have 5-star Google rating.
Right.
And I read some of their reviews, and interspersed between every other comment was things like, I'm not Jewish. And this organization helped my relative when in a serious need, etc., etc. And and let's just be clear that they have stated as part of their objectives that they serve everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Jews and non-Jews. You imagine, St. John's Ambulance, which was founded as a Christian organization.
Yeah.
I know it's slightly different because St. John's Ambulance are not necessarily emergency responders, but they can be. But what I mean is they attend events and things like that.
They provide first aid training.
First aid. Yeah. But look, no one says, well, St. John's Ambulance are only helping, Christians.
Yeah.
Right? You don't even hear it. But with this Jewish organization, as you said, I didn't realize there were so many different organizations outside, that independent private ambulance services. But, the NHS literally call upon Hatzola for their services when they are very, very busy.
Yeah.
And when they have such a high demand of ambulances and, need extra support, they call upon Hatzola, or they refer people to Hatzola.
So basically, it saves the NHS money and aids the NHS in its work.
So there is a complete, lie. Well, what about, other? No, it's just, but it just shows the heart of the people who are.
Yeah.
The other thing, we've, the financial stereotypes, which have come in, people claiming, was it insurance purposes, this whole greed aspect, which we see in ancient anti-Semitism. Also, blaming Jews for world events.
Yeah.
Collective blame.
Yeah.
We're seeing some of that as well in some of the comments.
People saying like, it doesn't matter about these ambulances. What about children in Gaza? What about what they've done to ambulances here, there, and everywhere and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And also, this wouldn't be happening, if Israel was not, bombing the Iranian regime. Well, first of all, like, I'm supportive of the state of Israel's actions in trying to defend itself from Iranian terror. But nevertheless, even if you take a political view which is in disagreement with the war, you do not blow up ambulances in the Jewish community.
Yeah, exactly.
You do not target Jews. You do not target synagogues. You do not put graffiti on Jewish bakeries.
No, I know.
You do not threaten Jews, killing Jews. Really, it's just, it's just shameful.
Yeah.
Really. So,
and the amount of people like just actually defending war crimes, defending terrorism, advocating for it openly. Like, the police should probably go through our social media alone, but there's probably tens of thousands of comments on thousands and thousands of different people's accounts where they could probably arrest a lot of people based on their support for terrorism.
Yes.
I mean, it is literally absurd that there is open support for terror, open support for Jew hatred, and a lot of the people making those comments are based in the UK.
Yes. The other one is dehumanization or minimization we're seeing.
Yep.
Some of the responses we've seen is downplaying the seriousness of it. It's not a big deal. It's just arson.
Yeah.
Suggesting the victims somehow deserved it. We've seen that. Treating the ambulance service as less legitimate or less worthy of protection. We're seeing some of that as well. Things like, well, what were the ambulances doing there? They got what they deserved and all that. It's just outrageous. But, we shouldn't take any of it as being credible critique. They are anti-Semites. Anti-Semitism is evil. It comes from a bad place. Anti-Semitism, in my view, is demonic.
Yep.
And it is something that we need to really speak up against and rubbish all of these comments. And they are rubbish, but sadly it's far too prevalent.
Definitely. And I just want to sort of let people know, with the comments on our page, sometimes we'll put a post up and there'll be thousands of positive comments, thousands of people, sometimes just a handful, sometimes a few hundred. Sometimes posts can explode and you get a lot of good or bad feedback from it. Ultimately, when we get attacked in this way, we get overwhelmed by the anti-Semitism to the point where we can't actually police everything. We either turn off all the comments or delete the posts or something. But normally
we report a lot.
We report a lot, we block people. But actually, we're leaving a lot up at the moment because we are documenting what are they actually saying against us, how these things are happening. We're trying to work out why the algorithm keeps taking us towards the anti-Semites rather.
In the last several months, actually, that's changed.
Exactly. We've had a lot of times where suddenly a post is just like thousands of anti-Semitic people are attacking us. But I just want to encourage people: if you are commenting on Facebook, don't be discouraged when you're getting abuse or attacked. Don't be discouraged by the laughing emojis or the mocking. This is a spiritual war we're in. You never know what your comment could do to change someone's mind or make someone look at something from a different perspective. Because a lot of these people are just saying the same propaganda. They're saying, "Oh, you're only doing this for your £7,000 or whatever you want to earn from the British government." Well, I wish, Netanyahu, if you're watching this, we both wouldn't mind $7,000. No, I'm just kidding. I'd be a millionaire with all the posts I've put up that are pro-Israel. If I got paid
$7,000 for every Facebook post.
That's what they reckon. That's one of the conspiracies, that we are getting paid £7,000 for every time we post something positive online. It's
Wow.
a crazy conspiracy. Like, we haven't
Crazy.
received a dime from Israel.
No.
All of our funding from CUFI, by the way, is funded by Christians, and our average donation is probably about £20 from people. So we're getting small donations. It might even be £10 or something. I don't actually know the figures, but we have a lot of grassroots supporters, Christians who are going to church, who are reading their Bibles, who are seeing what's going on in the news, and they are donating £10 a month, £20 a month, that kind of thing. That is where we get our funding from. We're doing this. We could be doing a lot easier jobs where people actually like us. Instead, we're doing jobs where we literally get death threats all the time, and we have to be very secure.
And every pound is appreciated.
Yeah, every pound is appreciated. Yes, I'm just saying, like, we are not doing this because of the money.
No.
Like, we're doing this because we firmly believe in the Word of God, and we are defending the Word of God.
Yes, yeah.
And the Word of God is under attack. Biblical truth is under attack. And we have to fight this battle on every angle, because we're seeing it more and more now, where this isn't just, it is definitely within the Islamic community.
Yeah.
It is definitely online with the trolls and the bots and all the rest of it. But we're now also seeing it in the churches. Yeah. We're seeing it in the streets. We're seeing it, as we're going to be talking about in our next show, where even, there is open anti-Semitism where councils are supporting it, and the police don't even say it's anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
Should we talk about that?
Well, I was just going to say about the £7,000, because you got me thinking about that. Now, I haven't seen a check for any Facebook posts.
No, I know.
So I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
But seriously speaking, do you know one of the reasons why they throw that conspiracy towards, not just because of this, that's actually anti-Semitic as well, because it's this whole greed and
also Jews controlling the banks,
Jews
and money controlling us.
But also because it implies that we have no moral framework and no moral coding from which we are making our stand from.
Yeah.
That they think that we must be getting paid in order for us to be doing, paid, like bribed.
Yeah, there's a reason we're doing this.
We're doing this, it's for money. Why? And that actually shows more about their set of values.
Yeah.
That in order for them to make a stand, that
there's something in it for them.
There must be something in it for them. They don't have the mindset that actually we might just be making a stand because we believe it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And, I could tell you this, it's not always and people will relate to this, I'm quite certain, because we've all had people who have come up against us. We've all had people who have perhaps been quite strong in their opposition towards us personally, and it isn't an easy ride sometimes. We might sometimes feel isolated, we might feel misunderstood or not understood, and so actually it does take a moral backbone in the climate we're living in to make that stand. So I would just want to encourage you that you are not alone, no one could bribe me to change my values in standing with Israel, because the Bible is the source of where I stand. Fundamentally, my stand with Israel and the Jewish people. Yeah, I'd like to also think that that there are other values as well in having a compassion towards Israel and the Jewish people, of actually wanting to stand for good against evil and to stand for what is right. And definitely. That's why we must provide moral clarity as well in our stand, so that we can really highlight this propaganda, or expose the propaganda and rubbish it for what it is.
Definitely. I agree completely, because we have to, darkness has to be challenged. We have to shine the light on it. And that's what we're doing. And like we've said, we're doing this because we're obliged to do it, because we're just literally speaking the truth. We're just speaking from God's word. We're speaking about the reality we see on the ground. And I think with a lot of these accusations, there's so much projection. It's sort of like, even with the accusations against Israel, that Israel's committing genocide, that Israel wants to expand its territory, wipe other nations off the face of the earth, that Jews want to control the world, all these things. actually the people accusing Israel of that actually want that themselves. They're the ones who
exactly
who want genocide of the Jews. They're the ones who want to expand their territory and take over the land of Israel. They're the ones who want to wipe out a people group and commit ethnic cleansing and so forth. They're basically projecting onto us
the things that they
do. Yeah. And also the other thing as well is the reward factor. For example, radical Islamists are told that if they literally murder Jews, they will be rewarded in heaven for it, sort of thing. We're not told. I mean, I guess we do have spiritual rewards in heaven, but the thing is, we literally
but not for murdering.
Not for murdering, no.
Yeah.
But also, even for defending Israel, we're not doing this for spiritual rewards. We're just doing it because it's the right thing to do.
But
stand
also,
against the evil.
There are earthly rewards. I say rewards in quotes for these terrorists because they get paid. If they're in prison. By the Palestinian Authority.
I know.
Their family gets paid. If they are in prison or if they are, if they quote again, martyred. Yeah. And the same, likewise, there's also paid for protesters on the streets of London, paid for London, paid for agitators and so forth. Like, we don't have, there's literally no funding. Everything is voluntary when we do any protests. And yet when we were in London the other week, when we did our Parliament event, we were actually quite surprised because there was a massive pro-Palestinian protest where they had placards, they had all this stuff, they had camera crews and everything. And I was thinking, well, this must be like some special thing. Oh no, it's just what they do every week because they've got the funding to do that. Yes.
You don't see the quote unquote Israel lobby, which is apparently, controls the world, controls the media, controls the banks and all the rest of it, which is obviously a lie. They're accusing us of something that is not true, right?
Yes.
And actually, I'm just had this thought. It's funny because again, the lie, Satan's lie. Who controls the media? It's not the Jews, in my opinion. It's Satan. Who controls the banks? The love of money is the root of all evil. Well, it's probably Satan again, right? What I'm saying is actually the controller of all these things that are evil is Satan. Satan is.
Well, it's not even evil. When you say controlling the banks.
Well, what I mean.
But it implies
the
but
banks
that's
are
where
evil,
the demonization comes in.
Yeah.
Is the fact, well, if the Jews are in charge of, putting it loosely, the Jews in charge of anything, that it must be bad.
Yeah.
Or they must be doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, though, it's like, actually, I mean, look at the reality on the ground.
Yeah.
The majority of media companies are against Israel.
Yes.
Majority of governments are against Israel.
Yes.
The UN is against Israel.
Yeah.
Different court systems are against. Everything's the opposite of what they're saying.
Yes.
How, if Jews control the world, they're pretty rubbish at it. Because they're not convincing the world to be pro-Jewish. It's sort of like a pro-Israel. Like, they're very bad at their job.
Yeah, it's like they're very, very bad at genocide.
Yeah, exactly. Because lowest civilian death rate ever.
and also the growing population of the Palestinian people.
Exactly.
They
gave away it's like the whole Greater Israel expansion thing. It's like, since Israel's been existing, they controlled the Sinai Peninsula, they control the West Bank, they controlled Gaza, or I should say Judea and Samaria when I say West Bank. The thing is, they gave away the Sinai Peninsula, which is bigger than the entirety of Israel.
Yeah.
So they gave away more land than they ever took.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, they're trying to expand and take over.
No.
Well, that's not true. They've given away more land because they literally are just seeking peace with their neighbours. That's all they're looking for. And they're not finding it, unfortunately.
Shall we move on, though, to... I mean, it's a similar theme. Let's keep this theme going because I have a picture here.
Okay.
Is horrendous picture. Okay, I will just forewarn. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see that on... you can see that on the screen. Right. You would think that looking at some of this imagery, disgusting imagery, that it is ancient anti-Semitism from perhaps the 1930s in Nazi-occupied Germany, or perhaps going back a few centuries before that to the Middle Ages. But these were pictures at an art exhibition in Kent, in Margate, seaside town in Kent, this week, where there were anti-Semitic cartoons being exhibited, which is just, I'm going to give that to you. Absolutely sickening drawings depicting Jews, depicting political leaders, including Israeli leaders, including the IDF. Nigel Farage is on there. Netanyahu is on there.
Trump is on there.
Trump is on there. But it's converging the sort of images that we have been familiar with, perhaps if we've studied history and we've looked at some of the anti-Semitic propaganda, which was prior to the Holocaust, which was showing Jews as being bloodthirsty, as being greedy, as being controlling, as being violent, as being almost unhuman and controlling and all these other things. This was on display and the name of the exhibition was Drawings Against Genocide by someone called Joe Strimped, I think. And this is in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have thought that this was a thing of the past.
Yeah, and just to explain a bit, because we do have some, well, obviously you can't see very well here, and we can't put it up because of legal reasons. We don't want to necessarily put it all plastered over the screen. Plus, it's just grotesque and demonic.
Yeah.
But just to explain it a bit, especially for the audience who are listening on Spotify and things like that.
Yeah.
The depictions here include, for example, there's Netanyahu here eating a baby. There's an IDF soldier with blood all around him and skulls. There's President Trump with an Israel flag and a Nazi flag, and he's puking out blood with money coming out of him, and as well as standing on a skull, which is meant to depict Palestinians. There's another one here of a demon, and it says "Stop Apartheid, Demon," which obviously is blaming Israel falsely of being apartheid. And there's other grotesque and horrible imagery there. And this was, this is the sort of thing that when you look at Nazi propaganda of the 1930s and 40s, this is how they dehumanized the Jews, to the point where when Nazis were literally killing and slaughtering men, women, and children by the millions, they didn't see them as humans anymore. They saw them as less than humans. And this is what we've got now, where I dread to think how many people in this country see Jews as less than human because of the indoctrination of this sort of imagery. And this is not new, by the way. No. The reason it's so shocking is because it is on display in a British art gallery, which is open to the public for anyone to see for free, and it was endorsed by the local council.
Yes. And can I just add, I must just correct and say that it was by an artist named Matthew Collings. I do apologise. I got a completely wrong name.
All right. So whoever that other guy is.
I would like to publicly apologise for perhaps accusing the wrong person. So I must hold my hands up there, but I'm pleased I've been able to correct it on air. It was a man called Matthew Collings who was the artist for that exhibit.
Yeah.
But either way, yes, going back to what you're saying, it's a Labour-led council which has actually advertised this event. And the police have been called upon, and the police so far have not taken any action.
Well, they don't see it as anti-Semitic. And this is part of the problem. This is part of the problem, yeah, because I mean, this here is like, I mean, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism has specific examples in which anti-Zionism becomes anti-Semitism. One of them is when you call Israel Nazis, right? If there's any association between Israel and Nazis, bearing in mind Israel, the Jews, were the largest victims of the Nazi genocide, the largest genocide, in recorded history that we know of, sort of thing. It was the systematic slaughter of the Jewish people.
Yeah.
and Jews were the victims of it. There are less Jews alive today than there were before the Holocaust because there were 6 million Jews who were killed, and that has damaged the small population of Jews has been damaged so much from that they've not even recovered yet.
And it started with this propaganda.
It did.
It started with this hate, and then it turned violent.
Yeah.
And there is definitely a connection.
Yes.
Between, and by the way, hearing the interview of a Jewish person who happened to be going by and reported on this, actually, that it was attended by clientele which seemed to be pro-Palestinian.
Yep.
As well.
But more than pro-Palestinian.
Drawings against genocide.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. I mean, to accuse is just to finish my point. Sorry, to accuse Israel of being Nazis is like Jews were the biggest victims. It is such an insult to call them that. But that's why they do it, because they're trying to insult the Jews, because they hate the Jews as much as the Nazis.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. It's like you said, when she went into that building, she saw obviously the Kafirs, the Palestinian Kafirs, which she didn't think was out of the ordinary because she is used to seeing that on the streets of London anyway.
Well, it was in Kent.
Kent. Yes. Well, she was used to seeing it. I think she's a journalist, isn't she?
Yes.
And she basically went into this art exhibition, then saw someone had globalized the Intifada T-shirt on. Another person had the Hamas triangle, the red triangle, which, by the way, is support for terrorism.
Yes.
You know, Hamas is an outlawed terror group. You should not have any symbology which is supporting terrorism. And yet this was on display there. And then when she spoke to people there, and she said, I'm just shocked. I can't believe that this is here. She was then verbally abused. The artist who made these things was being anti-Semitic towards her, calling her all these different names, saying all the talking points of the propaganda of the anti-Semites, where they, you know, say all of the jargon against Israel. You know, Israel's an apartheid state, Israel's genocide, or, you know, you want to kill Palestinians, all these other things. They're saying to her, it's grotesque and disgusting.
It is. And I just don't buy the fact that, you know, the saying, well, this is not anti-Semitic, this is against Israel. That is nonsense.
Yeah.
These are age-old blood libels.
Yep.
And we're familiar with the blood libels. And if we're not, we need to research what these are.
Yeah.
This is straight out of the anti-Semites textbook.
Yeah, and it's straight out of the pit of hell. That's where it's
I couldn't put it any better.
Yeah.
Straight out of the pit of hell.
And the thing is, we should point out here, because a lot of the time we hear this on the news, and even, I think you even asked it the other day when you were on GB News, he sort of said something like, obviously Jews shouldn't be attacked for the actions of Israel. And actually, the problem is Jews aren't being attacked for the actions of Israel. Jews are being attacked for the false accusations against Israel. Israel, you know, Israel is not committing genocide. Israel is not murdering Palestinian children it's not murdering Palestinian children full stop, but it doesn't kill anyone on purpose apart from terrorists. You know, when Israel accidentally kills even its own civilians, it tells about that. It opens an inquiry.
Yes.
When there's accidental killing of, you know, civilians in Gaza, they open an inquiry. You know, if a soldier has been found to be guilty, that soldier will go to jail and, you know, or face trial.
Yes.
The opposite is true of the enemy. When Hamas murders civilians, they celebrate it, and the world, well, the anti-Semites of the world celebrate with them that they've killed Jews.
Yes.
You know, when they don't accidentally hit cities, Iran has literally hit how many countries now? 11 different countries. And each time it has hit civilians in those countries.
And the cluster bombs that they are using against Israeli civilian areas without, you know, indiscriminately, without any care about Israeli civilians.
Yeah, and it's not, and even though Israel is at war with Iran I don't think has actually killed Israeli soldiers yet. They've only killed civilians because they're aiming for buildings and cities. And like you said, using illegal cluster bombs. I mean, it's illegal to fire rockets at cities anyway. It's illegal, especially non-military targets. It's illegal to fire cluster bombs, which actually cause maximum civilian damage. All of these things are what the enemy is doing against Israel. And like I said, when Israel makes a mistake, because mistakes happen in war, soldiers make mistakes. There can be good and bad soldiers in any country. You know, there are mistakes that happen. Israel holds its hands up and says, will investigate that. You know, for example, when that hospital was struck in Iran, where we don't know at the moment if it was, it looks either to be either a misfired Iranian rocket or maybe an accidental strike from America. We're not 100% sure because they haven't done the thing. No one wanted to claim responsibility for that. No one said, oh yeah, that was us, because everyone knows it's a tragedy and a bad thing.
Yes.
No one wanted that to happen. It was an accident, right? When Iran struck a building which killed 12 people, they claimed responsibility and celebrated it.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? And those 12 Jewish people, I should say.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, an Iranian terror group has claimed responsibility for the attack at the Hatzola ambulance service.
Exactly.
They claim responsibility. They
celebrate
we'll
their
find out
evil.
whether or not that their claim is true. But just imagine that.
I know.
We're not saying we'll see if the accusation is true. We're going to see if their claim that they did it
I know.
is true.
Because
it's completely reversed.
I know, it's kind of like with ISIS. ISIS claimed a few attacks. When ISIS was more prominent, they claimed some attacks that actually they didn't do, but they wanted, because they literally they enjoy terror. They enjoy destroying things and killing people. It's like, it is absolutely absurd. And Israel is the opposite. And another point I just want to put here, we talk about defending the values. When we were interviewing Colonel Richard Kemp last week, I sort of asked, I don't know who asked the question actually, but we asked him the question, why does he stand with Israel? And he gave an answer, I thought it would be more of a military answer that he would give, like, because, they're a moral army, this and that. But actually he went the Jewish route, and he said, because, Jews are, the teachings of Judaism are moral.
Yes.
They are good value teachings. And that's the thing. The Jewish people, Jews, are reading the Bible, right? They only believe in the Old Testament, okay? But it's still the Word of God. They are basing their principles on the Ten Commandments and on the teachings of God, right? Those teachings were given by God Almighty, right? This is why we have like the Judeo-Christian values, which we are trying to defend here in the UK, and some Christians are trying to divorce Christianity from Judaism, but
and not for the first time.
And not for the first time.
Trying to do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
And again.
Exactly. And the thing is, though, but Judaism teaches, they love life. They are a blessing to the world. They are looking to advance, medical sciences, science itself, agriculture, all these things that help the world. There are places in Africa now which have enough water to water their plants, and the sort of drip irrigation systems which help feed communities in arid, desert-like areas because of Israeli technology, which has helped them to grow vegetables and things. Israelis their society is based on the Judeo principles of the Bible, of God. And so they are morally on the right path. Okay, we are Christians, and so we see things slightly different when it comes to New Testament, Christian things, New Testament and things like that.
But we have those shared values.
Exactly.
In fact, Christianity would not exist
if
it wasn't for, Judaism and the teachings of the Torah, the Old Testament, the very fact that all of the promises and the prophecies and, and the Jewish writers of the New Testament, it is foundational.
Exactly.
And we need those Judeo values to actually understand our own Christian faith. So I think, we were talking earlier about, when I said, the reason is because of the Bible. And of course, the Bible is foundational. And some people might think, well, it's just because of the Bible that we stand. Well, actually, it's because of the Bible that we have the Judeo-Christian values, biblical values, which, by the way, our nation founded laws and principles and way of life and ethics were based all on those Judeo-Christian values, which is why they must not be dismissed. And if they are dismissed, if they're ridded, it's at our peril.
Yes.
This reason why this is from the pit of hell, and actually you only need an ounce of discernment to look at it and realize it is. It's also based on lies. It's very interesting, something you said a few minutes ago, where you said about, attitudes towards Israel, you sort of say it'd be one thing if, there's attitudes on something factual, but actually they are based on lies. And that's very, very important when we are defending Israel, defending, these things, that actually we acknowledge the fact that we're not just defending something because we're in denial. We're defending something because actually we're basing it on truth.
Yes.
And we have to be able to get down to truth. This is wrong, not just because it is actually inciting violence, but it is also based and is full of sickening lies, which, Satan is the author of lies.
Yeah, father of lies.
And a father of lies. So look, this is... Let me
rip it up.
See this? See where this should go? In the bin. There we go. For 3 points. But no, seriously. And that is the attitude that we need to have towards this. Instead of the police force saying, well, it's not anti-Semitic, freedom of speech and freedom of expression, those are not freedoms to incite violence against Jews. It simply isn't, because it will not just stop at cartoons.
No.
It will not. They are also conflating, their attitudes towards Israel with attitudes towards Jews as well, and they might use excuses saying, no, it's not against Jews, it's against Zionism. Oh, come on.
Yeah,
we've heard all of that before.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, councils also, I think, need to take some responsibility in what they give permission for.
Yeah.
And I would say that this council in Margate, I hope, will realise the seriousness of this, and the police also. Yeah. And we could keep talking about this subject, but we perhaps should move on.
Yep.
We've almost come to the end, I think, of this podcast. But we must acknowledge the fact that there is still war. Yeah. Israel is still fighting against the Iranian regime, the United States, also in its military campaign. We're hearing a lot in the news at the moment about what might happen to bring either closure to the current conflict or moving on to a new stage of it. We just don't know, and we're not going to talk about that in detail. But one thing I would just strongly recommend, you've mentioned the interview that we did with Colonel Richard Kemp. Mm-hmm. If you haven't yet watched that, then do have a look at our previous videos, because that is a very, very worthwhile interview that Alex and I had with Colonel Richard Kemp on the Zoom Live. It is available to watch among our videos from the other week. So he gives a really helpful insight into what has taken place, what's currently taking place, the reasons why the United States has taken action, and of course why Israel has taken action, the threat from the Iranian regime. And we're just going to end on the threat of the Iranian regime, because we've been saying for a long time now, for several years, that Iran is a threat to the United Kingdom. That's both domestically, in terms of the rise of groups that are sympathetic towards Iran, as well as the existence of the IRGC operating in the United Kingdom. We can recognize that there have been foiled terror plots here in the United Kingdom, sponsored by the Iranian regime, which thankfully have been foiled. But we're going to be talking about the threat from the Iranian regime directly from Iran. Yep. Because until just the other day, the Iranian regime had until now claimed that their rockets, and experts have validated that actually the rockets which were known for Iran to possess would reach mainland Europe, Central, Eastern, mainland Europe, and not the United Kingdom. However, with the strike, which was thwarted, thankfully, targeting Diego Garcia, that was beyond the reach that experts believed Iran could reach. So
Yeah.
now the state of Israel has warned the UK, warned the UK government, advising them that Iran has the capability to target London.
Yeah. So this is something not only did Israel, this is something Israel's been warning about for a long time, but Iran has also been saying it doesn't possess that ability. They actually said we limited ourselves because we didn't want to breach any of the Iran deal terms and conditions and so forth. This is the same regime that said we weren't trying to get a nuclear weapon, and yet there are countless interviews of them saying we were trying to go for a nuclear weapon and Israel kept thwarting us. It's like you can't believe what they're saying because they lie. They lie just as much as Hamas lies, just as much as the anti-Semites here in the UK lie. But yes, this was the first time where the ballistic missiles were fired at a range which could reach the UK.
Yeah.
And now the crazy thing about this is the media has actually been a bit defensive of Iran, saying, well, actually, it's not confirmed that they actually reached Diego Garcia. And the reason being is because they fired 2 rockets. One of them failed. And that failure, it exploded basically midair by itself without any intervention or maybe fell into the sea actually. But it had reached 3,000 miles, 3,000 kilometers, I should say. Sorry, 3,000 kilometers. And that is longer than they had ever fired it.
Yes, it is.
The other one was shot down before it reached Diego Garcia, and it didn't fail. So it was shot down before it reached there. So it didn't finish its full flight path. However, even if you look at the 3,000 kilometer mark, that still means it can reach, especially into mainland Europe, but potentially the UK. Now, I went on to BBC Verify, and they were saying, this is the 3,000 kilometer radius. And as you can see, and one thing they did, which was quite sneaky of them, was they put the middle of the radius in the middle of Iran. Right. Bearing in mind, Iran is a big country, one of the biggest countries in the world, right? And so the 3,000 miles actually reached Greece and Athens. So Athens, which is Europe, right? It can be hit. But actually, Iran is so big, I just want people to understand this. Iran is so big that you can fit France, Germany, Spain, and the UK inside Iran, and you'd still have a bit of space left. Because Iran is so big. So actually, if they change that, instead of being in the middle of Iran, if they moved it across 1,000 miles or 500 miles or however long, actually that would then mean it's in the zone of hitting Paris, Berlin, and potentially London. Bearing in mind, if the 4,000 kilometer range is achievable, then London is definitely within the zone of hitting. And one thing we also need to point out is, and we don't want anyone to fear or worry, we don't need to fear, but Diego Garcia has anti-ballistic missile capabilities. The UK currently does not possess those same abilities. So
and
it
also
might be a wake-up call to Europe to actually get some better air defences.
Yes, and even though, I know Germany and that has various air defences, but I think it's worth pointing out that this is not, or would be, and let's hope that we never find out whether or not this range is verifiable. But this is not a rocket which is going over rooftops, over Germany and then France, and they could get intercepted at any point. This leaves the orbit.
Yes,
and
goes
re-enters into out the atmosphere. Sorry, not orbit. Sorry, the atmosphere, and then re-enters from space.
Yes.
So actually, this is a really serious, form of technology that we need to be aware of. Also, I was looking into this rocket, and of course, there are the ones which we knew about, which, as I said, did have a range of Eastern Europe, Central Europe, but this is now much more, and it might be that if this was a North Korean model of rocket, North Korea does have rockets which would be capable of 4,000 kilometers if they could fire them successfully. So yes, with Iran, and the alliance with North Korea is quite feasible. And of course, you've pointed out quite rightly, the thwarted or shot down, I should say, rockets which was aiming for Diego Garcia, thankfully didn't hit. But why do we share these things? Well, I think we need to pray.
Yep.
We need to pray for the defense of the United Kingdom, our allies, and if that might make us feel perhaps a bit uncomfortable to think that the UK might be threatened with a strike, then imagine Israel.
Yeah.
Just think, Israel has this threat on their doorstep.
Yep.
On what has been now not just the last few weeks, not just the last few months, not just the last few years.
Yeah.
But a few decades now. That is the threat that Israel is basically trying to rid.
Yes.
That is what the United States is trying to rid.
Yeah.
The 3,000 kilometers is way, way, way further than the distance between Iran and Israel.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that is the reality for Israel, Israel civilians, and those who are defending and protecting that nation.
Yeah.
So if we are feeling perhaps, whether or not it's justified or not, but a bit more vulnerable as a country right now because of that threat, then it's a wake-up call for the reality of the threat towards Israel.
Yeah.
Israel is actually, and the United States, but it is of course supporting this. But Israel is, a line of defense for the West.
Yeah.
And that is why it is crucial that the UK supports Israel in its fight against Iranian terror, in this objective of removing Iran's nuclear threat and its ballistic missile capability. How that support looks like, practically, militarily, well, that's for the military to decide. But politically, I believe this country should be standing shoulder to shoulder with our closest ally in the Middle East, the State of Israel.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think it's now more evident to Israel's neighbours the threat of Iran as well, because Iran has hit out at all of its neighbours. It's trying to damage economies throughout the region. It's trying to spread fear, spread terror. I mean, that is the greatest export of Iran, other than oil, is terror. That is the main thing that they are exporting. And I think, we've been saying it for a long time, the threat of Iran, Operation Mordecai, we've been saying about it. The tagline was about, being aware of the threat of Iran, right? And not being blind to it. And I think that's the thing where, for us personally, we've been speaking about this, writing about this.
Because Mordecai warned.
Yes.
He saw the threat.
Yep.
He was aware of the plot. And then he encouraged Esther to take the steps because of the position that she was in.
Yes.
Israel was in the position because of the threat that, is posed against Israel, but because of its geography, in order to have to fight against that threat. And we should be there.
Yeah, we're Mordecai's warning.
We're Mordecai's warning. And
Yeah.
I'm talking not necessarily militarily.
No.
I'm talking about with our lips. Warning, watching and warning.
Yeah.
And supporting Israel through our prayers and against all of the things, all of the mess that we've been talking about that we see evident of those who hate Israel and hate God's people. That's what we need to be speaking out against.
Yeah. And I think if we look back at that biblical story with Mordecai and Esther, they didn't fight, obviously.
No.
Mordecai had wisdom and warned. Esther had courage.
Yeah.
And
prayed.
Yeah.
Fasted.
Yeah. Had diplomacy, all the rest of it, and basically used the gifts and talents God gave her.
Yeah.
And actually, it was then the Jewish people who were given permission to defend themselves on the day of Purim when the sons of Haman and the Antisemites tried to kill the Jews. The Jews were given permission to fight themselves. And that's basically what Israel's asking for now. It's asking, it doesn't need I mean, obviously America's helping a lot in terms of fighting the war, but it doesn't need the UK to fight its battles for it. Israel's more than happy to defend itself, but it doesn't want to be hindered by the UK. It doesn't,
Yes.
and it needs support. Like, let's be realistic here. And now I think, I read a report actually today about Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern allies who now see it as an imperative for the Iranian regime to be dealt with properly, because they see it as such a threat to the region. Now, does that mean there will be regime change? We're not sure. Does that mean there will be changes in Iran? Well, hopefully there will be something which neutralizes the threat of Iran, whether that's a new deal or a diplomatic situation or a regime change. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen there, but we just have to be praying that that Israel is victorious against the forces of evil that will seek to destroy it, because ultimately, whether it is the threat of Iran, whether it is the anti-Semitism here in the streets, whether it is the global movement of pro-Palestinian activism, which is against Israel. Israel is under attack in many different ways, and as watchmen on the walls, we have to be there, reading our Bibles, speaking the truth, shining a light on in the darkness, and doing all we can, which is, let's be real, all we can really do is notify people and tell them of the truth. We're not, grabbing arms and going into battle. That's not what we're about. It's about warning. It's about prayer. And prayer is obviously very powerful. Yeah. Prayer does work. But ultimately, we need to make sure that Britain and the church stands on the right side of history. We can't change Iran's mind. We can't change the anti-Semites' mind. Well, maybe we can, a few of them. But the main thing we can do is keep, basically stop the church from falling away against Israel, stop our government from turning its back on the Jewish community, those sorts of things. That's what we need to focus on in order to protect them, because they need Mordecai's and Esther's. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. For such a time as this.
Yep.
Definitely. And that's why, the work of CUFI, we believe, is really important for the time in which we're in. And we do want to thank all of our listeners and those who are watching for your solidarity, for your prayers, for your support. We are a voice at this time. And so we just want to thank you for your support for CUFI. And for those who are listening and perhaps would like to find out more information about how to support CUFI, then please, as we said towards the beginning, please go to www.cufi.org.uk/donate. And also, if you would like to subscribe to receive weekly updates every Friday from the desk of CUFI UK, then please go to www.cufi.org.uk/subscribe. And you can also opt to receive a Torch magazine as well, a free magazine. We're here. We want to equip as many Christians as possible with the truth. And I think there is a real spiritual battle going on at the moment. Anti-Semitism doesn't just happen in a vacuum. And, I was on GB News yesterday. One of the things I said, Al, was, of course, a nation that is unable to protect its Jews is going down a very dangerous path. We need to pray fervently for this nation, for the Jewish people in this country, that they will be able to live safely, securely, without fear, without intimidation. And, that isn't, we're not just praying that they will feel that. We need to pray that the very root of the problem will be eradicated. And that is this anti-Semitism, which is against all of the values that we share with the Jewish people, British values, Judeo-Christian values, and just hatred. We need to pray that this will be countered with the truth, countered with, God's love. We have answers. We have answers.
Yep.
And we need to make sure that our voices are heard at this time. So if you're listening to this podcast and you are a member of the Jewish community, we just want to make it absolutely clear that we stand with you. We represent tens of thousands of Christians that are with you, that are praying for you, and metaphorically are standing shoulder to shoulder with you, and perhaps physically as well.
Yep.
In various ways through our various campaigns, we're doing our best. We want you to know that you are not alone. But for now, from me and Alex, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. Please remember to like, share, let us know a comment about what you think about this podcast. Please make sure you subscribe as well to receive more notifications of future for Zion's sake podcasts. But for now, may the Lord be with you and bless you. Bye-bye.